What is up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? Welcome to, I think it's episode 39 of the Greyt podcast. We're going to be talking some, obviously, college football today. We're going to be talking some transfer portal. We're going to be talking about the two semifinal games in the college football playoff. And yeah, that's kind of just what we're going to get into here. It's really all there is to get into. We got some Georgia players who have declared for the NFL draft, so we'll get into that as well. But let's just get right on into it. I guess let's start with the semifinal games. As far as my picks, I think Ohio State beats Texas. I think Notre Dame beats Penn State. That's how I feel. And I can get into why. Ohio State, I think, is currently right now just playing at an elite level. I think they're finally playing to their potential. And while I think Texas is actually a pretty good matchup against them, because Texas has such a good defense, I think Texas is one of the few teams that I think can, I won't say stop their offense, but possibly limit their offense as much as anyone can. Um, so I like that, or I don't like that for Ohio State. I like that for Texas. But at the end of the day, I cannot trust Sarkisian and Quinn Ewers in a big spot like this against a team who has a good defense in Ohio State. I just can't trust them. We saw them against two games against Georgia. Simply just not be ready for the moment, and specifically offensively. And if they are not able to get the ball rolling offensively, then Ohio State is going to blow them out again. And I don't think Ohio State is going to score 40, 50 points like they have been. But I think Ohio State could get into the 20s and blow Texas out if Texas's offense is not able to get it rolling. That's my worry for Texas. So give me Ohio State. As far as Notre Dame Penn State, I think this is a battle between two teams that are the exact same. I just think Notre Dame is a better version. I think Notre Dame is more injured, which does worry me for them, but I think Notre Dame has the more dynamic playmaker at quarterback. I think they have the best running back in this game in Jeremiah Love, although Nick Singleton is great. I do think Penn State has the best receiver in this game, and it just so happens to be a tight end in Tyler Warren. And I think the defenses are pretty comparable. I think they're kind of similar. Um, so I think you're going to see a low scoring affair, but I think Notre Dame will be able to pull this one out. The game against Georgia was impressive. The way they were able to impose their will against a Georgia team who wins games by imposing their will. And again, I think James Franklin in a big spot in a big game, what does he do? He loses. And I don't want to hear, oh, but Penn State got to the semifinal. They played SMU and Boise State. Stop. Just stop. Notre Dame's proven more to me at this point than Penn State has. So give me Notre Dame, even though after the Notre Dame Georgia game, I had this Notre Dame and Bears fan, come onto a Facebook post of mine from a month and a half ago talking trash. Look, look. I can understand you're a Bears fan and a Notre Dame fan. I understand that neither one of your teams has been successful or relevant since the 80s. So this newfound success, I'm sure it's a new feeling, and I'm sure that you know you don't know what to do with these newfound emotions and this newfound feeling of success. But this is not the way to go. It's not the way to go to trash talk a man who is a fan of a team who's won two national titles in the past 3 years. But you know what? Do you? Do you, King? Do you? Anyways, and by the way, he was already coming up with excuses as to why Notre Dame wouldn't end up winning the national championship. Say, "Oh, we're just so beat up, we're so injured." You see, real champions don't make excuses. That, but again, they haven't been relevant since the '80s. But I digress. That's how I feel about the two semifinal games. Um, I think one could be a really fun game, Ohio State, Texas, and I think the other one will be defensive juggernaut game. I mean, I could see it being 10-7 at halftime, you know? But let's get into the transfer portal and some draft declarations that have happened specifically on the Georgia side. So, if you have not heard, the Georgia players that have declared for the draft, excuse me for coughing, are Malachi Starks, Jalen Walker, Michael Williams. Those three were kind of expected. Those three are the pretty much first rounders. Tate Ratledge declared. Dylan Fairchild declared. I think Jared Wilson, the center, also declared. Dylan Fairchild, kind of surprising, kind of not. Honestly, I was 50-50 on him. Jared Wilson's surprising, but that's okay. To be the way this offensive line performed this year, all of them can go for all I care. Just being honest. Arian Smith declared. I mean, let's hope he doesn't drop passes. And if I see this man go to the NFL and become a star and not drop passes, I'm going to be even more angry. Just going to put that out there. I still haven't got the notification that Dylan Bell is transferred, so I'm still upset about that. I need to see that notification. I need to see it now. Were there any other declaration? Warren Brinson declared a defensive tackle. Nazir Stackhouse, I don't know if he has declared yet, but he should. I'm pretty sure he's a senior. So Smell Munden declared. That was expected. I think that's all of them. I think that's all of them. So yeah, and then Kristen Miller. Yes, Kristen Miller, a defensive tackle. He said he's coming back next season, a defensive tackle. So that's really good for Georgia. He played really well this year, and he'll be an instant starter next year. And the big news for Georgia, finally, we have some transfer portal news yesterday and today for Georgia. Yesterday was the big news. Zachariah Branch and his brother Zion Branch. Zachariah being a wide receiver, Zion being a safety. Both are transferring to Georgia, which is great news for Georgia. It is absolutely something that Georgia needed. Zachariah Branch is a guy, he is dynamic. He is great after the catch. He can, but most importantly, he will catch the ball and he can create separation because it was more than just a drop problem with the receivers. What also seemed to be an issue is that Dylan Bell, Arian Smith, Dominic Lovett London Humphreys seemed to have a lot of issues separating from their defender. Zachariah Branch will not have that problem because he is dynamic. And he's also will be a great special teams returner. That's what he is really known for. He's basically Anthony Evans, who's transferring out, but 10 times better, is basically what he is. Zion Branch, I think Zachariah's brother Zion has dealt with a lot of injuries, so I don't know how much playing time he's really gotten. But safety is a room on the defensive side where we need bodies. With Malachi leaving, with Dan Jackson leaving, so we need a lot of, and plus we've had one safety transfer out, so that's a place where we just need depth, and we know we were able to get that with Zion. Plus, we had two safeties today transfer to Georgia. Let me see if I can find their names real quick. Let's see. See if I can find it. Hold on. Give me 1 second. 1 second. Yes. So Jaden Harris, a safety from Miami, is announced today. He's transferring to Georgia. And then a UAB safety, Adrian Maddox, who originally had said he's going to transfer to Florida, today flipped and is now transferring to Georgia. So we're getting bodies in that safety room for sure. Noah Thomas, the wide receiver from Texas A&M, is expected someday now to transfer to Georgia as well. Another wide receiver who can catch, who's really dynamic, that we could really use. And I think that's all the news there. I know Damon Wilson. It says he's planning to enter the transfer portal, and just so anyone doesn't know this, there's a difference when you see a notification that says someone has entered the transfer portal and someone's planning to enter the transfer portal. You see, the difference is when usually if the notification says so and so is planning to enter the transfer portal, it means that that player has told the team, hey, I want this money, NIL, to stay here. If I don't get it, I'm going to enter the transfer portal. That's why it says they haven't entered it yet. They have planned to enter it. And simply if UGA doesn't meet what Damon Wilson wants, he's going to enter the transfer portal, which is a weird decision to me if he does end up entering the transfer portal with Michael Williams gone, Chas Chambliss gone, Jalen Walker gone. Damon Wilson was really set up to have a really great year next season, but you know what? If he wants to leave, he can leave. I've come to a point where unless it's like the star guys, like the cream of the crop guys, you can go. Because at the end of the day, I'm Georgia has the depth. I'm not worried about that, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Now, if Gunnar Stockton says he's going to transfer, oh boy, I get a little worried. Which, speaking of that, Jaden Rashada said he's going to transfer to the sixth school, but again, who cares? Jaden Rashada, I just don't think is that guy anymore. I think it said he's going to UTEP. Oh no, that was Malachi Nelson. We'll see where Jaden Rashada ends up. I mean, he wasn't even the third string quarterback this year. Ryan Puglisi was, so it doesn't surprise me that he's leaving. But yeah, transfer portal's been hectic, crazy. Honestly, I understand it's absolutely ruining college football, but I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of fun. I'm sure it's not fun if you are a head coach of, let's say, Georgia, Oklahoma, any of the big schools. It can't be fun being in it, but just an outsider watching it, it's kind of fun keeping up with it. I'm just gonna say that. I'm just gonna say that. Let's see. I'm gonna look. I'm on three's transfer portal. What do you want to call it? Page right now. I'm just going down looking. I know Mekhi Hughes, the Tulane running back, he's projected to go to Oregon. Oregon's getting a lot of guys in this transfer portal. Who has Takario Davis? I've talked glowingly about Takario Davis, the corner from Arizona. He's going to Washington. It's a solid move for him. We know what? Why don't I just kind of briefly talk about to kind of end here because this time of year is so interesting because there isn't a ton to talk about. I mean, you can talk about obviously the two semifinal games you have coming up, but you can only talk so much about those games. Like really, you can only talk so much about them, and the transfer portal is hectic and it's impossible to keep up with everything going on. And but I'll go ahead and give a few predictions that I have for next year. I've talked about one already, and I guarantee that LSU is making the playoff next year, and I feel 100% in that still. I think LSU has done amazing in the transfer portal. I love what they've done, and I think Garrett Nussmeier coming back was absolutely massive for them. And I think that the additions that they've made not on offense, sorry, well on offense, but I was going to say defense. I'll just pull it up real quick because I can do it by team here. Let's pull up LSU because I think they have the number one portal class if I'm not mistaken. But I mean, on the defensive side of the ball, you bring in an edge rusher in Patrick Payton from Florida State, who is highly touted. He was a 4-star coming out of high school. He's a 4-star now, projected 4-star now. And he can be really great coming off the edge for LSU. Plus, you add that with edge rusher Jack Pyburn, who played a lot of snaps for Florida. You add that with an edge rusher from Nebraska in Jamari Butler. And you can really tell that LSU had specific positions of need that they needed to address, and they addressed them, and they addressed them in droves because the defense has been an issue. The secondary has been an issue. So what did they also do? Cornerback Mansour Delane, who I have talked glowingly about on this podcast. They got him. Jakeem Jackson from Florida, a young corner. They are bringing him in. Those are the only two corners. I'm pretty sure they're talking to a few safeties right now in the transfer portal and have them on visits. They're bringing in a punter in Grant Chadwick from Middle Tennessee. Wide receiver on the offensive side of the ball. They needed to address the offensive line because they're losing Will Campbell. They're losing Emory Jones. I think they might be losing one or two other guys. Their wide receiver room, frankly, was disappointing, I think, this season, aside from Kyron Lacey. And so they addressed the wide receiver room. Nick Anderson, Barian Brown. Who's the other guy? Destin Hill from Florida State. They addressed the wide receiver room. Nick Anderson, a big body wide receiver. Barian Brown brings that speed and can play good on special teams. They addressed the interior of the offensive line with Josh Thompson and Braylon Moore. They are losing Mason Taylor to the draft. What do? They bring in Oklahoma's top pass catcher from last year or this past season, who was a tight end in Bauer Sharp. Plus, I actually think they have another tight end visiting this past weekend. I think they had another one visit this past weekend. They have bringing in interior defensive lineman in Sadir Mitchell from Texas. They're just bringing guys in where they need needs. They don't want to find themselves in a position where they don't have bodies. So they're just bringing guys in that they feel, even if they aren't starters. Like, you look down this thing, like, for example, Sadir Mitchell might not be a starter. Destin Hill probably will not start at wide receiver, but it gives you depth. And depth, honestly, is the most important thing. Like, obviously, your starters need to be great, but you also need depth because injuries inevitably happen. They inevitably happen. And I feel like that's also what LSU has heavily addressed here. Is not just, yes, let me get great starters in Nick Anderson, Barian Brown, Patrick Payton, Mansour Delane, Jack Pyburn, but also let me get depth. Let me bring in Michael Van Buren, who will be a backup quarterback, a good backup quarterback to Garrett Nussmeier. Let me bring in a Destin Hill, who, if Kyron Lacey or Barian Brown get injured, he can come in and play. That is important, and they have addressed that. Another prediction I have is that I think Ohio State desperately needs to win this national championship this year. And let me pull up, for example, bring up Ohio State's depth chart this year. Okay. Why do I get this thing on front of? Can I just get their 2024? Let me see. I'm just trying to look at their depth chart, bruh. Oh my gosh. I usually look at our lats, but now they're putting a little blocker thing and make you want to, of course, they want to make you pay money. Okay, this will work. So, the reason I say that is because I think next season, Ohio State isn't, I'm not, look, listen to me. My brother in law is an Ohio State fan. He's probably listening. Don't freak out or flip out like I'm right here saying, oh, Ohio State, I mean, they might barely make a bowl game next year. That's not what I'm saying. Ohio State will be in the playoff next year, I'm sure. Okay. But what I am saying is that I guarantee, I guarantee Ohio State will be significantly worse next year compared to this year. Why do I say that? Jeremiah Smith will obviously be returning, and he's going to get better and better. Okay, he's a freak of nature, right? And if you have him, you always got a chance. You're losing Will Howard, and look, you kind of got quarterback depth. Obviously, you lost Aaron Nolan, but I don't think he would have been your starter anyways. I feel like Julian Sayin will end up being your starter next year. Devin Brown is quite simply not good enough. And I don't know much about Lincoln Keenholz, or however you say his name. But I just feel like Julian Sayin could be that starter for Ohio State next year, unless they bring someone in like they did this year with Will Howard. But you're losing to Mecca Egbuka. See, this is why I like our lag, because it tells me what like year they are. Like Carnell Tate, I don't know if Carnell Tate's a senior, but Emeka Egbuka's leaving, and that's your second best receiver. You're gonna lose guys on the offensive line. You're gonna lose Donovan Jackson, and you're gonna lose Josh Simmons. You're going to, and then I think you're also going to lose Seth McLaughlin. I think. Running backs, you are going to lose, I think, both Travion Henderson and Quinshawn Judkins. You will have Caleb Downs for another year, which is great. You're going to lose Jackson. And then defense is the main issue, because defense, you're going to lose Denzel Burke. You're going to lose Lathan Ransom. You're going to lose Davison Igbenosum. You're going to lose Jordan Hancock. You're going to lose JT Tuamolau. You're going to lose Tyleek Williams. I think you're going to lose Ty Hamilton. And I think I already said you're going to lose Jack Sawyer. That's a lot of starters. A lot of starters. And I'm not, now, just to be clear, I'm not sure which of these guys are seniors, which are juniors. And maybe you will, if any of the guys I just named are juniors, maybe you'll get them back. But I think you lose most of the guys I just named, specifically on defense. You're for sure losing Jack Sawyer. He could be a first-round draft pick. Same with Tyleek Williams. And I'd probably say JT. Denzel Burke, I don't know if he's a junior or a senior. I think he's a senior, because I feel like I heard his name possibly leaving for the draft last year. Or maybe that was Jordan Hancock. Whatever. But you could realistically lose all three of your starting corners in Davison, Jordan, and Denzel. I mean, you could realistically. Now, again, Ohio State has depth. I'm not saying they're gonna be in the Reliant Quest Bowl against Kentucky. That's not what I'm saying. They'll be in the playoff, but I worry that your defense next year is going to be a major question mark, and is going to be something that loses you football games. That's what I fear, because the defense this year has been better than I think it's been in a while. and that has really helped, especially helped the offense, and it really helped you win games. The veterans you have on this roster that all decided to come back is what helped Ohio State win this game, or not win this game, is going to help Ohio State possibly win the national championship. And I think that if Ohio State does not, because Ohio State is the best team on paper in the country. They were that way before the season, they are that way now. It was just a matter of could they play to their potential? Because Ryan Day, in Ryan Day's era of Ohio State, they have had the tendency at the worst moments to not even come close to playing to their potential. For example, the Michigan game. But it felt like that was almost a wake-up call at this point. And I don't see them. Look, they are not going to. They cannot in this upcoming game against Texas and the national championship. I don't see both of those being blowouts and them performing that the way they've been performing against Tennessee and Oregon, because those were borderline perfect. You cannot consistently keep up that pace, but they don't have to keep up that pace. I mean, you're talking they won by 20 against Oregon. You also only scored 7 points in the second half, but I digress. But it's just something of note for Ohio State. I also have I was going to say worry, but I'm not so much worried as I am more so happy about this. And that's that I think Alabama. See, it lets me look. Oh, never mind. It doesn't let me look at Alabama. I thought I'd be like, why they let me look at Alabama's but not Ohio State's? I think Alabama's going to run into an issue as well. Because it seems now this is the second transfer portal in a row where Alabama's having a ton of guys leave and enter the transfer portal. You're losing Jalen Milroe. Who's going to be your quarterback next year? Ty Simpson? I'm not confident at all in Alabama's depth. At all. Okay? Ryan Williams, I'm confident in because Ryan Williams is Ryan Williams. Okay? Other than Jeremiah Smith, he's the best young wide receiver in college football, period. But will you have a quarterback that can get him the football? And I look at their wide receiver depth chart. I'm looking at the depth chart. Kendrick Law, he's left. Caleb Odom, he left. Kobe Prentice, he left. I think they're still going to have Jeremy Bernard. I think. But Tyler Booker going into the draft. Parker Brailsford, I think he's returning. Jaden Roberts might return. But Tyler Booker, I think, is for sure leaving. Jalen Milroe, gone. Justice Haynes, their backup running back, gone. Although I think Jalen Milroe is a good thing overall because I just don't think Jalen Milroe is ever going. He can win you games, and he's going to have those few games every season where he's just electric. But then he's going to have the games like against Michigan in the ReliaQuest Bowl, like against Vanderbilt, or actually not against Vanderbilt. He did fine against Vanderbilt. It was the defense. Like against Oklahoma, like against Tennessee. He's going to have those games too. And you look at the defensive side of the ball. Jahad Campbell and Deontay Lawson are probably both gone. Your Mike linebacker and your Sting linebacker. Damani Jackson, your corner, might be gone. Malachi Moore, I'm pretty sure, is gone. He's a safety. And I just don't think Alabama under Kalen DeBoer has the depth that they used to have. And I think that's a problem. Therefore, and I didn't really make I made a prediction with Ohio State that they aren't going to be as good, but that maybe that's a soft prediction and an easy one to make because of the way they look right now. I think Ohio State will make the playoff next year. I don't think they win the Big Ten. I think they will not win the Big Ten again. And to further that prediction, I think Oregon wins the Big Ten again next year. But I think Alabama misses the playoff again next season. That's what I think. And let's just look at their schedule for 2025. Since we know what that schedule is. But look at the schedule. At Florida State, you would imagine is a win. I mean, sure, it's at Florida State. Florida State looking for a bounce back year, but how much better could Florida State be realistically, especially with Thomas Castellanos as your quarterback? I don't know about that. And then they'll beat Louisiana Monroe. I think they'll beat Wisconsin. You're getting off, and here's, I think, the start point where you start to realize it. You see, we've talked so much about, Kirby just for some reason he can't beat Alabama except that one fluke time, the 2021 national championship, right? And his record is what, like 1-5, 1-6, something like that against Alabama. But you see, what they don't also tell you is in all of those games that he's played against Alabama and lost, not a single one of them. 2 of those losses are in Tuscaloosa, I think. Yes. Yes, I'm pretty sure I'm right. 2 of those losses happened in Tuscaloosa. Not a single game under Kirby Smart has been played in Athens against Alabama. This year, or next season, sorry, will be the first time that Kirby Smart gets Alabama in Athens on Saturday, September 27th. I guarantee you, because that game is going to be so hype. That stadium is going to be so loud because we finally get those losers in our home stadium. I guarantee you Georgia wins. I guarantee you. Guarantee it. They'll get Vanderbilt. They'll get their revenge against Vanderbilt. They got to go at Missouri, though. Missouri is always feisty. They got Tennessee. They at least get Tennessee at home. But again, they've had their struggles with Tennessee recently. Then guess what? Then they got to go at South Carolina. South Carolina almost beat them in Tuscaloosa this year. Then they get LSU, a team who I believe will be in contention to win the SEC. I think they'll be a top 3 team in the SEC. Yeah, you get them at home, but still, Oklahoma, who you apparently have issues with, but you get them at home this time. And then you get Eastern Illinois. But then you end the season at Auburn, an Auburn team who I think is going to be very much improved. Okay, I'm not saying that Auburn is in contention to make the playoff or to win the SEC, but I absolutely think Auburn gets to 7 or 8 wins this year. And one of those wins could be you. Because I think that people just are not realizing the difference between having Nick Saban and not having Nick Saban means for the football program, for any football program. The day Georgia loses Kirby Smart, you best believe if I'm still doing this podcast, I will come on this podcast. I will probably cry for 20 minutes, and I will tell you straight up that it's going to take time for Georgia to recover from the loss of Kirby Smart. That's just the reality. That is the reality. And that is not me saying that I think Kalen DeBoer is a terrible coach. He's trash. He can't recruit this. That. I'm not saying any of that. But what I am saying is that he's not Nick Saban. I know, such a crazy concept, right? He's not Nick Saban. You cannot expect that just because your name is Alabama, that just means you're in the playoff. You saw that this year. They talked and talked and talked about, oh, SMU. Why'd they get in the playoff? We're Alabama. And then you go and pee down your leg in the ReliaQuest Bowl against Michigan. Like, come on now. Let's be honest with ourselves here. But Alabama fans are not being honest with themselves. Your glory days, your charmed existence, all of that is over. Done. Buried. So you know what? I'm not just going to make a prediction for 2025. This is a prediction that I'm going to make that goes through 2030. Alabama will not win a national championship by the year 2030. From now until then, it's not happening. They certainly, I don't think, will win a national championship under Kalen DeBoer. I just don't think that was the right hire. And here's the thing, I don't know who was the right hire because it's hard to determine who the right hire is when you're looking at it from, okay, we just lost the greatest head coach of all time. Who do we pick to replace him? No one looks like the right hire. No one does. I don't think you made a bad choice, but I think Dan Lanning would have been a better choice. I think, I don't know if Dabo Sweeney would have been a better choice. Although Dabo did make the playoff this year. Just saying. And they at least put up a fight against Texas. But those are just a few predictions I have. I'll give some more once I have some more as the playoffs progress and as the off season starts and the off season progresses. I'm gonna take some time to kind of think about what I want to do podcast wise going forward, especially once the season's over. I'll probably talk about that a little bit more on Friday. That will be the next episode 40, good old 40. I hope everyone has an amazing Tuesday evening, an amazing week. Enjoy these college football playoff games. Try and get away from the cold weather as much as you possibly can. And yeah, everyone have a great day.